There we go. Hello, party people, and welcome to Office Hours. My first Office Hours back in a week. I was out in Massachusetts on vacation. Went to Salem, Massachusetts, where the witch trials were back in the 1600s. I feel bad that I don't know that off the top of my head because I just visited the cemetery for the whole witch trials thing. It was a really cute, quaint place. I love that part of the country in the fall. I think we're probably going to make that a every year annual type thing. And then this weekend we're going to the haunted house stuff in Los Angeles for Disney and Universal Studios. But then after that, I'm home for like 6 weeks straight. So you'll be seeing more of my live streams on both Twitch and like webcasts on YouTube. Jonas says, what's your go-to green screen solution? You've had a foldables thing. It is, I don't know that you can see it here. Let me move the camera just a little. It is a wall, a fully painted wall there in my home office. So it just makes it a whole lot easier to do really good quality green screen stuff at the drop of a hat. If I could do anything different in my office, I would redo the layout of it because the office door is directly behind my desk, which is really bad for like energy wise. You don't want people walking in behind you and surprising you. So I think if I could do it all over again, I'd pivot the office a little. But this was the only way that I could do it and have a bookcase behind me with all kinds of stuff on it, which was like the big goal for this office setup. We're actually looking at houses. Eve and I are looking at moving to another place because we both want more space. I've only got a 3-car garage, and the way the garage is built, I just can't put a lift in it. So I'm limited to 3 cars. Right now we have 5, which is a little bit of a problem. Jim Van Allen, good morning. And I need more car space, and Eve needs more closet space actually too. She's got like 60 linear feet of closet. If you imagine floor to ceiling closets, like 60 feet long, that's how much clothes, makeup, shoes that she's got. So it makes, like right now it's scattered all over the house. We need something that's closer in. Renegade Larson says, hello, Brent. It's been a while. Nice to see you on Twitch again. Yeah, I tried live streaming on TikTok, and I adored it. It's a lot of fun. It's extremely interactive. Like lots of people come in all the time. But the drawback with it is they're not necessarily tech people. So I had all kinds of people coming in and out of the stream who didn't know anything about tech. So it wasn't as useful there. So I'm going to switch to my live streaming over on Twitch. Chandler says, welcome back. Thank you. And Renegade, thanks for the 14 months of Prime subscriptions. So let's go check out there are a ton of questions over on PollGab. Let's see how long we go with this stream. The top #1 voted from PollGab is from Mattia, who says, I've heard, let me refresh something over on my computer here because it's not showing. Refresh, there we go, perfect. Matthias says, I've always ignored database T-SQL snapshots. What are the good use cases, if any? Matthias, you might be thinking of the brand new capability that came out with 2022, which lets you freeze I/O inside T-SQL, but then you can do snapshots at the storage layer. That is totally different than anything you've ever heard about T-SQL snapshots before. The good use for those in SQL Server 2022 with SAN integrated backups is instantaneous backups no matter how large a database is. They're wonderful. Anthony Nocentino recently had a blog post series on those. But if for prior to 2022, the database snapshots that we could do was we would execute a T-SQL query and then create basically a read-only snapshot of a database that still lived on the same SQL server. I never saw a lot of good use cases for that. The only good one I ever saw was that when somebody was going to do a deployment on a database that was not in an availability group, it wasn't in log shipping, anything like that. So it was just a standalone one database on one server. So then they could take a snapshot right before the deployment, and then if anything went wrong with the deployment, they could quickly revert to the snapshot. But that starts to fall apart when you have modern high availability and disaster recovery solutions like availability groups. It doesn't work very well. Cheathon says, hello, Brent. Nice shirt. Thank you. You're welcome. Glad you like it. SQL Dev DBA subscription there, renewal. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's see the next top voted one. The next top voted one is from All Night Log, who asks, are there any recommendations for what to do when we hit high transaction log VLF counts on our AG cluster? Yes, run SP Blitz. SP Blitz is my totally free health check script for SQL Server, and it gives you a prioritized list of things to fix. High VLF counts is in that list, so if you have high VLF counts, it'll surface there. And then for every alert, it also includes a URL, which I jokingly say stands for "you read, loser." But it's got a whole big post on there with what you should do when you have high VLFs and how you go about correcting those. So check that out. Just don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's covered extensively in that post. Let's see here. Next up, we have Pruching Man. Pruching Man says, do you think learning R and or Python can be useful for database administrators who function as production DBAs but also have to occasionally help with data validation for new systems? No, if you're doing data validations, there's a language for that. It's called T-SQL. You can do that kind of validation with T-SQL. I would question what kind of validation you're doing that doesn't involve database querying. If you're trying to compare to, say, the contents of files, then that's what the developers should be doing. You shouldn't be doing that. You should leave that to the developers. Let's see here. Next up, we had, let me click over into here. We had, SQL Dev DBA says, hello, friends. Ashish says, good morning, Brent. Good morning, Ashish. Tired DBA asks, how do you feel about multi-factor authentication connecting to SQL Server databases? Does this become a nuisance if a user wants to connect to multiple servers to run a query against? Yes. Period. Now, does that mean you shouldn't do it? No, obviously not. The whole thing with security is there's a balancing act between making something really easy to use versus making it secure, and it's really hard to do both. And so multi-factor authentication tends to lean more towards making things secure. You could say that I would rather just let everybody query for everything with no security whatsoever, and that would be very easy to use, but of course it would be a giant pain in the rear for security, like you constantly have data lost everywhere. So just kind of is what it is. Your company will decide whether or not they want multi-factor authentication, and if they do, then you're just kind of stuck with that. Next up, In the Name of God asks, can you explain how to use set exact abort on and when we should use it with begin try and begin transaction? He says, am I the only one confused here? No, not at all. In fact, there was a time in my life when I was going to write a class called Fundamentals of Stored Procedures, because most people don't understand how to do error handling, how to do transaction handling, how to do security across multiple databases where you may not have permissions, all kinds of things. And at the end of the day, I just decided against it. At the end of the day, I said, you know what? It's better to just link people to other existing materials. For example, with set exact abort on, Google for Erland Sommerskog, E-R-L-A-N-D, Sommerskog. That's the one I should really spell, S-O-M-M-A-R-S-K-O-G. Error handling, and he has a 3 or 4 part series on error handling that goes into detail on that. I wish I could distill it down into a 60-second answer, but unfortunately it is way more complex than that. You're not the only one confused. I think the vast majority, maybe 99.9% of database developers out there don't understand how to do that because it is pretty dry and boring. Next up, Help Me Brento asks, we have an issue where the plan age in the plan cache is less than 30 seconds. When this exists, performance is poor. When we clear the plan cache, things get better again. It lasts for 10 minutes and then it starts again. What should we be looking at? What you're seeing there is a symptom, not the root cause. Your server's under memory pressure, but most likely the memory pressure isn't caused by what's in the plan cache necessarily. It's being caused by the queries that are being executed against the server. Check out my Mastering Server Tuning class. In my Mastering Server Tuning class, I teach you how to prioritize and how to look for the root cause of things. And in there, there's a module dedicated on how you troubleshoot memory pressure. So my Mastering Server Tuning class there. Sometimes people are like, Brent shills his classes every chance that he can get. Well, there's a reason that those class modules are like 30, 40, 60 minutes long. I can't teach you how to transplant a heart in a 60-second video on TikTok. Well, teach me how to do it for free in a 1-hour video on TikTok. No one's watching that. No one's other than you. And then the next time that you need to do it, are you going to actually go back to that one specific TikTok? Hell no. You're going to ask me the question again. And I'm not all about doing that. Pseudo Echo asks, now that ChatGPT can answer many coding questions, will this impact the quality and difficulty of the fewer questions that actually make it to Stack Overflow and DBA.Stack Exchange? Yes, and I actually wrote a blog post about that. I think your question captures that absolutely perfectly. You'll see fewer ideally, as people learn to use tools like ChatGPT, you'll see fewer low quality, easy to answer questions on sites like DBA.Stack Exchange and StackOverflow.com. And personally, I think that's great. I think we shouldn't have so many "how is Babby formed" questions on those sites, because we should have easier ways to get to those. For a while, Stack Overflow tried to answer people's questions while they were asking them. While someone was writing the question, they'd surface and go, hey, here are some answers to that question, but people just ignored it anyway, sadly. A Rebel Girl asks, what are your thoughts on putting the SQL system databases on their own dedicated drive? Is it good or bad or overkill? I think it's massively overkill. I have never run into a situation where I ended up performance tuning master model and MSDB. If you're doing that much work in master model and MSDB, then I start to question how you're going to do high availability and disaster recovery, because you don't really want to restore those databases when all hell breaks loose. TempDB is separate. TempDB you probably do want on a non-dedicated or non-system dedicated drive, just so that you're not replicating that data. If you use anything like SAN replication, you're not replicating that data somewhere else, and you want it on the cheapest storage you can possibly get that's fast, typically local solid state. Let's see here. Next up we have Matai asked another question. I've inherited a server where previous full backups are restored once a day. Oh, that's really common for reporting servers. I've seen that a lot. He says, the BI department asked me to improve restore time, so I've left the databases in standby and I restore the diffs plus the logs. I'm noticing high variance in restore time. Sometimes it takes 90 minutes, sometimes it takes 30 minutes. Is this expected? Yes, depending on how much workload happened the previous day in production. I'll give you the classic example is index rebuilds. If somebody was doing index rebuilds in production, that rewrites a large amount of data, and all of that does hit your differential and log backups. So you want to start asking tough questions about what are we doing on those really high workload days. Let's see, live in Twitch, CSI Batch says, hi, hello there, I attended the Power Platform Community Conference 24 in Vegas last week. Would have been cool to meet you, but you probably had better stuff to do. Yeah, I was in Salem, Massachusetts on vacation. I tend to not go to conferences in Vegas that are unrelated, like I don't do anything with the Power Platform. It's so hard to get in and out of the Strip for conferences. Like if I leave my house and I want to get to a particular hotel for a conference. By the time I drive to the Strip, park the car, walk through the casino to get to wherever it is, it's easily 30, 45 minutes to get to those locations. So I usually don't bother going to those kinds of casinos. Sometimes, I go to casinos all kinds of times, but not to specific conferences if I'm not actively working at the conference. In fact, during AWS reInvent, I'm probably going to leave town. That conference is so giant. It doesn't affect day-to-day life outside of Vegas, but it's useless to go anywhere near the Strip during reInvent. They have something like 50,000 people come to town for that. It's totally bananas. Next up, My Tea Got Cold asks, have you recommended DBCC Clean Table at any point in the last 10 years? No. I'll be honest, I don't even know what that does. Never heard of it. Absolutely no clue. Next up, Coffee Badger asks, what are your thoughts on Amazon's 5-day return to office work week policy? It's just a way to do layoffs. They want to do layoffs, and it's not anything in particular to Amazon. It's all companies who suddenly go, you know what, we've changed our mind, everybody come back to work. What they're trying to do is get people to leave without firing them. And the sad part is it gets the best people to leave, because the best people have all kinds of options. They can work anywhere that they want. They already have a really good network. They have referrals easily. So they'll just ask their friends, hey, is someone else hiring work from home? And they'll end up going somewhere else. And the only people who will stay are either the people who love office work, which is few and far between in terms of tech work, or the people who couldn't get another job, so the quality tends to go down there. It's kind of sad. Next up, Queen Bee asks, does anything bad happen if you don't prune your backup history for SQL Server? Yes, the more history that you have, the longer it can take SQL Server's built-in own queries to find the stuff that it needs. And so, for example, if you have backup apps that go and query for the most recent backup, or they get a chain of history for a backup, or they just check to see how many backups have been done, you can end up with longer and longer query times. I had a case on my site like 15 years ago that I blogged about where I had a customer, that might have even been in my own shop, where the backup cleanup job wasn't working. And I had to go through and delete the data manually, so that kind of sucked. Next up, Borsp asks, with Veeam and all the other SQL backup agents, do you still recommend SQL backups via maintenance plans, or are the third-party backups good? It depends on who's managing the server. In small businesses where you might only just have one sysadmin or two sysadmins and no dedicated SQL Server DBA, in small shops like that, I tell them you should use just one backup tool because I want it to be as easy as possible. I tend to not recommend SQL Server's maintenance plans or Ola Hollengren's backup scripts until you have at least a part-time DBA, if not a full-time DBA. Otherwise, if you don't have somebody focused on the care and feeding of SQL Server, they're just going to be overwhelmed with the complexity when it's time to go do a backup or restore. G-Surgeon is in the chat. Hey, good to see you, G-Surgeon. Now let's see, next up we have Maximus. Makes me think of the Fallout TV series. Maximus says, what are your recommended resources for learning Stoicism? Because it's such an old topic, what I would really do is just go Google for resources on how to learn Stoicism, and you're going to find a variety. Try a few and see which style resonates with you, because people have all kinds of different learning styles. I would also say focus on ones that give you practical tips as quickly as possible, because sometimes people are trying to sell training material based on a large quantity of pages. They're like, in the beginning, God made man, or however they start with a detailed, ridiculous history on the subject. You don't necessarily need to know about the origins of Stoicism in order to start learning about practical tips that work for you and well in everyday life. So that's probably where I'd start. Next up, Hal says, will we see AI mental health counseling in the near future? It's already here. There are already AI mental health tools, and your health insurance company might already offer them. So depending on your health insurance company, I know mine does, offers a chat to help you kind of suss out how big your mental health needs are. And I say that just because my insurance company has done a good job of educating consumers about it. Our buyers, us people who are paying for the health insurance. So it's just, I found it a really lovely experience that it was like, okay, talk to me, tell me a little bit about your problems, what are the biggest things that you're facing, and it wasn't necessarily that it was going to fix me, but it was just like, guys, believe me, that would take a whole team of mental health professionals. But at least it got me started on, where I should start to look for resources. Let's see here. Stats Don't Lie asks, my friend is getting an error on updating statistics. Updating stats on the read-write database doesn't fix the issue. Help. What's the error? Do I look psychic to you? If you don't give me the error, I can't help you. Did you even read the error? I am constantly amazed at the number of people that I interact with, like on emails. And they're like, I'm getting this error. Here's what the error says. What should I do? And I'm like, did you read the error message out loud? Just read it out loud as if you were talking to a friend. Errors often have guidance. They tell you what you should go do. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case with all errors. A lot of errors are kind of cryptic and complicated. But if you don't give me the error, the Sam hell do you expect is going to happen? Next up, Tommy Two-Tone asks, what are the top issues you see when migrating SQL Server failover cluster VMs from single subnet to multi-subnet? So really, for you to do failover clustered instance VMs, you need shared storage. And generally speaking, when people want to suddenly go to multi-subnet, they're also trying to go to SQL servers in two different physical locations. When you do that, there's no such thing as shared storage because the shared storage doesn't replicate in real time. So they tend to install third-party storage replication tools. When they do that, they don't test it out first to see whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. Here's your good test for it. Because everybody thinks that they're going to fail over automatically with no data loss like a regular failover clustered instance does. Here's your big test. Go do a demo of that tool, and don't do it in production, obviously. Go set up some SQL servers dedicated just for this task. Start an index rebuild on your largest table. Let it go for a minute or two, and then try to do a failover. What you're going to learn is that the secondary instance most likely has gotten behind, and you're going to lose some amount of data when you go to failover. Or if it's configured differently, if it's configured with synchronous replication, you're going to find that that index rebuild is terrifyingly slow, is staggeringly slow. So you have to choose between either you're going to slow down your inserts, updates, and deletes, or you're going to lose data on failover. So when people do that demo and they understand what their real choices are, then they suddenly start going, I don't think failover clustered instances in multiple subnets really make sense for us, which is true. Let's see, we'll do one more. Let's see here. Let's scroll down through a few and see what else. There are a ton of them. Oh, I'll do this one. This is actually interesting. DBA team asks, are you frequently using your Apple Vision Pro, or was it nice at first but not so useful now? Literally, the only time I use it is on flights. I take it with me because I got a nice small case for it now. The original case, the original Apple Vision Pro case is absolutely giant, and it takes up tons of space in your case. I got a third-party one that's much smaller and nicer. It's just like $10 on Amazon. It works way better, so I can fit it into my carry-on now. And I use it on flights to do work, to watch videos, to sleep even. I just used it last night, flew back from Boston. It was like a 5-hour flight, and slept with it. So that was really nice, like relaxation type stuff was really useful. So yeah, that's literally the only thing I use it for is on the plane. I don't use it when I get there. I don't use it around the house. It's just not something that I'd use there. So would I recommend it? Well, if you fly a lot, like I fly a hell of a lot, if you fly, and most of my flights are for vacation, they're not for work, but if you fly a lot, having a Vision Pro really makes it seem bigger. It makes your space seem bigger. It really makes economy feel much more like first class. Now, you're not playing any of those fancy games that involve slicing and dicing your hands across the screen, but if you just want it for like productivity work, it's amazing. Would I recommend someone spend $3,500 on that? Not unless you fly a hell of a lot. Would I spend it again, knowing how much I fly? I think I probably would. Because when you look at how much international flights cost, like I've taken flights that cost $5,000, $10,000, then it really doesn't seem like that much when you do multiples of them a year and how much better it makes your flight experience. I've still never seen anybody else on a plane that uses them either. It's the flight attendants are usually really like surprised how the thing works. They're surprised that I can see them and talk to them while I have the thing on. It's kind of amusing. SQL Dev DBA follows up with any thoughts on the Macan EV. I don't like Macans. I don't like Cayennes. Like to me, if I'm going to get an SUV, I'm going to get an SUV. I've got a Land Rover Defender 130, the big long SUV. When we're taking road trips, Eve can sleep in it, can like lay down completely comfortably. I can lay down completely comfortably in the back, and we still have plenty of space for luggage. So we do half the car sideways is luggage, the other half is a sleeping space. So to me, that is a way better of a setup than the little cramped Macan and Cayennes. They just don't really make a whole lot of sense. SQL Dev DBA says I had a Land Cruiser in Iceland. I started with a rental Land Cruiser, and then when we moved there for like 9 months, we bought a Defender in Iceland as well. I absolutely loved that thing. That was the first Defender that I'd ever had. It was great. It was awesome. Super capable. Really loved it. Now, the new Porsche EV Boxster, that I'm very interested in. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I happened to catch one. There was one charging at the coffee shop I usually go to. Brand new, it hasn't come out yet. The Porsche is still doing like heat testing with it, which is why it was in the Vegas area. And I stopped and talked to the Porsche employee who was driving it. It was very funny, thick German accent. The dude was smoking. I was like, man, the instant that this thing comes out, I'm going to be all over that. But the SUVs, not so much. All right, so I will take a break here. I actually have to go take the Defender to our wrap shop. We use a wrap shop for all the cars, and one of our detailers accidentally messed up the wrap on the gas cap door of all goofy things. So we're getting that fixed before I go drive to LA in 2 days to do the Halloween stuff. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see y'all on the next office hours. Adios.